In August, members of the Green Party of England and Wales will vote on a number of available positions within the party, including a new leadership team. I recently sat down with Mothin Ali to chat about his campaign for the deputy leadership position. Mothin, welcome. How are you today?
I'm very good, thank you. Thank you for having me on. Really
It's all
appreciate it.
right. No, it's a pleasure. It's good to hear what you've got to say and what you're offering people. So, just before we get started, Mothin, you're elected councillor, Leeds City Council, and a keen gardener as well, with a dedicated YouTube channel to that. Um, you went a little bit famous recently for your involvement in the Hare Hills unrest last summer. And when I say involvement, I don't mean what the Daily Mail and others tried to claim, which was that you were part of it. I'm talking about the viral video of you actually trying to calm things down. So just before we sort of get into the grit of everything, um, tell us a bit about you.
I was born in Sheffield. I grew up in quite a deprived area in Darnell. Um, my dad was a steel worker, so we're from a very working class background. My mum raised my father passed away when I was quite young, so my mum raised four kids on her own. Um, on a very limited budget. So we went through quite hard times when we were younger. I moved to Leeds when I was a teenager, and my whole family moved with me. We lived in again in that same area that you're talking about where the unrest took place last year. So I spent a lot of my formative years in that area. I lived there for about 15 years, and that community has always been an area that is home for immigrant communities. So it used to be a Jewish community, Irish community, then I had the Windrush generation, and in the 70s you had a lot more Bangladeshis and Pakistanis moving into the area. So it's always been a area where immigrants come in, find their feet, get themselves established, and move on to something else. So now it's home to a lot of Eastern European settlers, a lot of people who are coming in new from African migrants, new Kurdish, quite a lot of new uh, immigrant communities who are trying to find their feet. And there's so it's always been a home for that, for people to get themselves established, get themselves developed, and move on with life. But there's certain communities that are always looked down upon. You know, if you look at the history of the Romani community, they've always been persecuted. They've got right the way from the Holocaust to the way they were treated in parts of Eastern Europe. How they've faced persecution and isolation for a very long time. But I'm their elected representative. So the way I see them is they are my community, they're my people. Every single person in Gipton and Hare Hills, uh, I owe I owe a debt of responsibility to. You know, um, they put their trust in me, so I have to give myself back to them. I have to try and fulfill that trust. That night, I got a phone call from the police. Well, the first thing that I saw was saw a few videos going around on WhatsApp, and I started getting a little bit worried because my wife had just gone out to pick the kids up as well. So I was thinking, what's going on? I hope she doesn't get stuck in all that craziness. And then I got a phone call from one of the police inspectors saying, "Look, everything's going to pot. We need you out here." They weren't the words he used. The words he used was a little bit stronger. Um, we just need you. We need you to help try and calm things down. I ran from my house to the scene. It was probably the fastest mile that I've ever ran, and I'm not very fit. When I got there, it was just absolute mayhem. The police cars turned upside down. Um, I tried to find out what was going on, and then when I found out what was going on, I went to the father of the children who were at the centre of all of this, and I just tried to and the mother tried to comfort them, both the parents, and trying to create a bridge between the social services and the community. Um, so the videos that you mentioned, they were quite late on into the night, so they were like 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. But I was out there I got there at 6:30. and I was out there till 3 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
And,
It's
uh,
quite a selfless thing to do, isn't it? I suppose to put yourself in sort of in harm's way in that sense. Even though you're there as an elected representative, I'm sure you understood, the dangers of putting yourself into quite a volatile situation. So no, full credit to you for that. Talk to me a little bit about your gardening.
gardening is has always been my peace. You know, it's we've always lived in terraced houses, so we've never had our green space. Um, so we've never had access to that. But some of my happiest memories go back to when my parents had an allotment. So I just remember being a little nuisance on the allotment, running around. A lot of the I say old men, but they were during my dad's age. So just causing a nuisance, nicking gooseberries off different people's bushes and apples, that sort of thing, as little kids do, and just happy memories. I remember this one memory that is really vivid, where my eldest brother, my eldest sister, my mum, my dad, they dug this massive hole in the allotment and they buried loads of manure and green waste, and then they built a raised bed over the top of it. And and I remember jumping into the manure, just playing about with it like it was nothing. And after my dad passed away, we couldn't keep the allotment. So, because we were in a terraced house, we just never had access to green space. And then when we finally were in a position to move into our own house, um, which is quite recently, we were really lucky to find this one corner plot with this huge garden. And over the last sort of 10 years, I've just, under my mum's guidance, just worked on building that and transforming that into our own little, little paradise. I mean, we've shaped it around like a Bangladeshi village. So the way the tree canopy works, the way the fruit works, everything is productive. So it's not an ornamental garden. We've got apples, plums, pears, uh, cherries, peaches. We've got a couple of fig trees in there.
Quite
Uh,
functional then as well.
it's all about the functionality of the garden. So we've sectioned it off into almost three sections. So the main productive areas at the bottom of the garden, and then we've got the play area for the children in the middle, so we can keep an eye on them. And then we've got the little seating area with a pond at the top, which I was get into trouble from my wife about. For every time we make it look nice, then I come up with a new project and make everything dirty again.
It's good. It brings peace and joy though, doesn't it, to others? And obviously that's inspired obviously the community gardens and would you be happy to talk a little bit about the garden in Gaza?
That, that's um, quite quite hard.
You spoke passionately about it at Green Party conference last year as well.
I mean, that's the first
So
time I actually. I think that was probably the first time I actually openly spoke about it. But a lot of rooftop gardens, people, because of the confined areas, people have very little access to land, so they're growing on rooftops, they're growing on balconies, and that's how I learned to garden. So I learned to garden in a bathtub and a raised bed that I made in a patch of about 2 or 3 meters of concrete. Um, so on that raised bed, on that bathtub, I built a little trellis and an arch, and a couple of raised beds that we could have. Uh, we call them Bangla Khudu, the bottle gourds. We could have bottle gourds climbing over them and growing in that tiny space. So I just took some of that knowledge and I shared it, especially around, when you've got little access to soil, how do you make soil? How do you create soil? So one of the things that I do is and if you've got little access to land, then how do you have a compost pile that can produce lots of compost? So instead of having a compost pile separate and having access to soil, which is quite difficult, let's combine the two, right? So we can build a bed, a simple thing like a bathtub, layer the whole bottom with some material that's going to act like a sponge and hold on to water. So I often use wood or woody type of material. So that's going to take years to break down, but you're going to get years of functionality of acting like a sponge. And then we fill it with all your waste, so all your kitchen waste, all your any hedge trimmings, any grass clippings that you have, all your manures in the middle. And traditional gardeners will say never add fresh manure, never add this fresh stuff because it causes problems. But then what we do is we top it off with more soil. And then all you're doing is growing in the first 6 inches of compost or the first 6 inches of soil. And then that bed's breaking down and it's
and
going to
feeding it.
feed for the
Yeah,
next few years.
it's
And then,
it's yeah, no, it's incredible to that you've not only you know you've taken a passion, something that you care about and that you're passionate about, and you've shared it with others, whether it's in Gaza, whether it's with the community gardens that you do in your local community. And I think it's really admirable. That's why I wanted to ask you about it. I do want to move on just because of time. So, cards on the table. I'm a member of the Green Party. But I haven't yet decided who I'm going to vote for in the deputy leadership race. So, why should I vote for you?
I mean, one of the things that has driven me to stand is the party has been very southern facing, and it's appeared to be quite middle class. But we're a party of the left, where in 2024 we took a lot of seats and a lot of northern seats and a lot of inner city urban seats. So seats that have traditionally voted Labour, but they're because they're fed up with the two-party system. They're looking for something new. They need an alternative. And a lot of people who have contacted me throughout the country have said that they voted because they saw the Green Party's position on Gaza. They saw me speaking. They saw me quite active, and that was one of the things that drove a lot of inner city people to vote for Labour, vote for the Green Party. Sorry, um, and I think that the Green Party leadership has to reflect our voter base and our membership base. Our membership base is becoming a lot more diverse, and I think it'll be a real powerful message to send to our electorate, to our members, that we can have a working class northern lad who is now part of the leadership team, who effectively can speak on the same levels, has the same life experiences as ordinary people, and it isn't just a robot. It's not a trained politician who's just going to go out and give you skirt past your questions and try, that sort of thing. So yeah, we need real people in politics. We need real personalities in politics, and for too long it's been missing. People are fed up of that. People want uh, um, real people. We don't need billionaires and millionaires masquerading as working class or masquerading as the man of the people, as they say. What we need is actual people, and we need to elevate their voices and make sure that if they're passionate, then they can represent something and they can represent values that they hold dear to. And that's the thing that I want to do.
Hmm. And how important is for you is it to elevate other voices? And we hear a lot from politicians that want to elevate their own. But how important do you think it is that if you are elected, that you use your position to elevate the voices of others?
I think it's massively important. There's been a tradition with some people where they get elected and they pull up the drawbridge behind them. And you can see this whether it's the immigration debate with people like Kemi Badenoch, or you can see this with people who get into leadership positions and forget about where they came from. Now, what I think it's really important to remember your roots, where you came from, your where your community is, what you've gone through, and try and bring people who've had those similar life experiences and amplify their voices and make sure that they're being able to speak. Because what we can't do is just say, "I speak for everyone." I speak for every working class person. You've got a working class person in the leadership, so therefore you don't need to speak to anyone else. We can't do that. We've got to make sure that, all right, I've got into this position now. How do I open the doors for everyone else?
The makeup of the Green Party, the way the leadership contest works, there's three positions of power, shall we call them, available. We're either going to end up with a co-leadership in Ellie and Adrian with one deputy leader, or we're going to end up in a sole leadership with Zach Polanski and then two deputy leaders, working together. If the latter result happens and you are elected, but you find yourself elected alongside another candidate, how will you navigate working with somebody who may have very different views and ideas on how to move the party forward?
Um, I think whenever there's, let me give you an example, right? And I'll take it back to permaculture a little bit. So whenever you have ecosystems, right, the most intense life is on the boundaries. So where two ecosystems merge, right? So where the edges, everything happens on the edges, right? So if we've got some ideas, maybe that are a little bit more centrist, a little bit more left, where the excitement's going to happen is where those two ideas merge. So we can pull out as long as we're respectful and we can challenge them in, and we can have a robust debate. We can really push some ideas forward, I think. So I'm not really worried about who becomes the leader or who is elected as co-deputy. I think we can have some real exciting debates, and I think we can have some real productive ideas that come out of it. So yeah.
Charlotte's asked on TikTok, and it's kind of a similar question. Is there anything that you disagree with the leadership candidates on? And if you are elected as their deputy, how would you work around those differences?
So it's going to be hard without, like, I've tried to take a position where I'm not endorsing anyone else.
Hmm.
I've tried to stay quite neutral because whoever becomes the leader or the
Yeah.
leadership
So,
deputy, we're going to have to
so
work closely with.
that's
So
fine. Ignore the first part of that
I'm
question
not.
then. Just,
I'm
just,
not going
just
to.
move on to
I'm
the
getting to the
if
question.
yeah. I was going to
I'm
say
going to answer the
if you're
whole question.
elected, how would you work around them?
Right. So I'm going to answer the whole question. Right. There are issues. There are issues around communication, especially around media strategy, and I think that needs to improve drastically. I think the leadership needs to move from that southern focus, and it needs to have that broad appeal. At the moment, it doesn't. Um, and how would I work around it? I think without without trying to say that I can resolve every problem, but I think I can provide a counter narrative to some of those voices. And if I can at least present a different view, then there's something for people to consider. You know, um, but if you don't have that voice in the room in the first place, that's where we'll fall down. Because if they're just talking in an echo chamber, we have to have someone who's going to be not afraid to ruffle a few feathers.
Hmm. And is that you? You're not afraid to ruffle a few feathers?
um, I think so. I'm not. I'm not worried about what people think of me. What I'm worried about is, are the members represented effectively?
Hmm.
Are the constituents represented effectively? So, what media narratives go out? How how that rubbing on the edges happens? Uh, we can handle a little bit of that as long as the members and as long as the people are represented effectively.
Hmm. Well, you've touched on media strategy. Leo on TikTok has asked, in an age where online communication is so integral, what is your aim for social media campaigns, and how will you achieve them?
I mean, social media has to be at the heart of everything. So it goes back to what you were asking in the last question a little bit. I was on a Green Party training course last year before I got elected about how to win elections and what you have to do. And they completely ignored social media. And when I raised my voice and said, "Look, we have to focus on social media. Everyone has to look at social media and work on social media." And I gave my example of my TikTok videos, and I gave my example of the work I do on YouTube and everything else, and how I relate stuff together. And they were like, "Okay, that works for you, but it's not going to work for everyone else." I'm like, but it has to. People have to learn how to work with social media because it's so powerful. You can you can reach such an audience so quickly, and it's really key. Do you know? Um, so it's something that everyone needs to get a lot more savvy at and a lot more used to using. You know.
And obviously you've mentioned obviously you've got the YouTube channel as well. You've got your TikTok. So do you feel that you've got adequate experience in social media to be able to sort of help drive the party in um, a more sort of successful social media campaign?
So I mean, this is one of the things that I've been doing quite locally. So we've done um, s- some of the younger candidates or the younger Greens are a little bit more receptive to these sort of ideas. Um, so what I've found is what I've done is I've shown up quite a few people how to quickly edit a video, um, how to talk to camera, you know, um, because there's one lad I'm thinking of when we did a TikTok video together, and the first he felt a little bit nervous. So the first thing I said to him was just look, just imagine you're talking to someone behind the camera. Ignore the camera, just talk to someone behind it. You're talking to your best friend. Now go. You don't have to be perfect. There's free editors out there. You can quickly edit something. You can take a little where you've got a little where your film jumps from one issue to another, and you've got a big snap in the middle. How to put in transitions, how to put in a little picture, a little bit of a B-roll. We can show that sort of thing, and we can do that quite quickly. So now what I've seen is his social media game has improved massively. You know, he's starting to put out TikToks every single day, Instagram Reels, and I think that really makes a difference. You know, having that. But whenever you start in social media or any videos, your first 50 videos are going to be rubbish. Until you get comfortable talking to camera, it's not going to, you're not going to get there. But the only way you're going to learn it is by doing it.
And social media is really important in terms of messaging and reaching a wider appeal. But the Green Party have also employed a strategy they call Target to Win. And that's been used in places all up and down the country. It's helped win many of the 850 plus councillors that we have, and also helped secure four now MPs in Parliament. There are some within the party that absolutely swear by it and say that it's the only strategy and we should follow it to the letter. There are others that are a lot more sceptical, and then there are people like me who are sort of on the fence. Where do you stand with regards to Target to Win? Do you think that it's a winning strategy that we need to follow, to the letter, or do you think that we should get rid of it altogether, replace it with something different, or would you like to see more of a mix of that strategy alongside some other sort of wider messaging and comm strategies?
So I'm going to have to relate this back to my own campaign. Okay. So I wasn't a target candidate. My seat wasn't a target to win seat. There's really good things within target to win, and there's really bad things within target to win as well. So let's start with the positives. So target to win um, teaches you how to make effective frequency, how uh, to make sure that your communication is on point to a point where someone receives your leaflet through the door, they know it's a green leaflet, they know the messaging is right, they know what you're about, yeah, and they're seeing you so much that they know who you are and they know what you stand for. They've got a face to relate to the leaflet. They've got a face to relate to the campaign. They've got a face to relate to the name. Um, so it's really good in that sense, right? From the procedure of getting your name out there, fantastic. Issues with Target to Win, big issues. First of all, um, it was developed for leafy suburbs, middle class areas. Yeah, that's the sort of constituency target audience that it had in mind when it was developed. then the selection process can be quite difficult. Well, sorry, let me rephrase that. The selection process can be quite exclusionary. Okay, um, because it's focused around middle class, leafy suburbs. It doesn't take into dynamics that are happening on the ground in
Hmm.
inner city areas.
Now, just if
Um,
I may on that, Mothin, because I would imagine that there will be some within the party that would argue that the reason that it's more the sort of middle class leafy suburbs that are selected is because those are the areas where there's evidence that the Green Party have got a better chance of winning. And obviously, if there is evidence that we stand a chance in those seats, it makes sense to target those seats specifically. So, what would you sort of say to that?
so I was my answer to the last bit would sort of cover what your question here. You sort of preempted. Um, so because it targets leafy suburbs and it's quite exclusionary from that point of view, what it doesn't do is it doesn't um, take into take into account dynamics that are on the ground. So if something an issue that's happening on the ground that may be happening locally, maybe happening nationally, it doesn't take into account that. And because it's just for purely data driven almost, it can't be reactive. So uh, I'll give you an example. So my example, right? I was a really driven candidate. I saw what was going on in the ground on the ground. I saw the reaction of the people, but because the data didn't show that, right? Because the data showed that we had a hardworking candidate. The ward has always voted Labour. Um, it's solid. He's got strong visibility, all of that sort of thing. Because the data did, because that didn't match the target to win criteria, I'm not a target to win candidate. And the reason that I say it was exclusionary as well is because it didn't involve people like me in the conversation. What Target to Win doesn't do is it doesn't take account of the candidate or the caliber of the candidate. It's almost based on if we get the campaign right, we can drop any Tom, Dick, and Harry in, and we'll win the seat. But my belief is that you need a strong candidate who really values that community, who puts that community at the heart, and then build from there. Um,
Yeah. So would
so
you would you would you like to see the party move towards a mixture then, where we keep target to win because we know that it works in the areas that it's implemented in, but we use it rather than it being sort of a sole tool. We use it alongside different techniques, and we tailor which techniques we use for the areas rather than trying to blanket the whole country with one campaign technique.
Absolutely. I mean, just to touch on, there's a little bit of the last question that you asked. Let me just finish that one off. So last year in 2024, we had a massive influx of former Labour seats, former inner city seats. So we have to now develop a strategy that doesn't just focus on those leafy suburbs. It has to combine two. So what myself and a few others are working on at the moment is something called Target to Win Plus. Okay. So yes, we use Target to Win in terms of the leaflet, the strategies, the effective frequency that we're going to come out of there. But then we need a plus, and the plus is going to be covering the inner city areas, areas that there's some local issue. There's some local candidate who's really outstanding. There's someone who's able to mobilize a ground team, um, like we did last year. You know, I keep giving this example, right? We do postal vote letters, and we've got a couple of days to get those letters out before the postal votes arrive. And one night I was panicking. I was thinking, I've got 3,500, 4,000 postal vote letters to get out. How am I going to get them all out? And I put a couple of messages out because I developed a nice little network. And all of a sudden, these messages went out. Mottin needs help, and overnight, within a space of a couple of hours, we got 3.5 letters out. Across the whole of Gipton and Hare Hills. And my ward isn't small; it's something like 39,000 residents. Um, so we managed to do that overnight, and it was like, if you don't have a good ground game, you can dual target to win. You can put your leaflets out. You can do all that intensive stuff, but your ground game has to be on point,
And I
and
suppose
people won't let.
your proof in that sense that is achievable and you can win even without target to win because you've done it. So I think that's definitely credit to you in your campaign. I apologize for interrupting. I would like to move on. I'm aware of time. Um, Bigger question for you now. Back in April, current co-leader Adrian Ramsey, who obviously is standing for re-election this time with Ellie Chowns, he took to Twitter to say, like the BNP and UKIP, Reform, i.e. Reform UK, will disappear once voters realise what they really stand for. Do you agree with that statement?
Um, I think okay. Let's think about it. Let's unpack it a little bit. So, will they just disappear? I don't think they'll just disappear. Will they eventually disappear? I really hope so.
Hmm.
But there's a lot of work to do in the meantime. Okay. Right now, Reform are gaining seats and they're gaining traction and they're gaining it really fast. But why are they gaining it? Okay, that's the question we've got to ask. Why are people turning to Reform? Um, like I alluded to him earlier, a millionaire masquerading as a man of the people, right?
Hmm.
Just because he smokes a cigarette and holds a pint in his hand, that doesn't make him a working class normal person, right? We've got a broken system within our political cycle. We've got the Tories and the Conservatives, Tories and Labour. The Tories implement austerity, Labour get into power, they implement austerity. Nothing changes. People's lives are getting worse. You know, there was a report out not so long ago that talked about children facing Dickensian styles of poverty, Dickensian levels of poverty. We're in 2025. We're in one of the richest countries in the world, and we've got children who can't have enough food in their bellies. What kind of country is that? We can't have. I get phone calls every single day from people who are struggling to pay their rent,
Hmm.
from people who don't have enough food to feed their children. You know, this is what drives me, right? And as long as that level of poverty and that level of s- gap between the rich and the poor exists, right? People are going to look for answers that the mainstream aren't offering. Reform have come along and they're saying, right, blame the immigrants, blame the Muslims because they're causing all your problems. If you blame them and if you get rid of them, all your problems will be perfect. But they're not addressing the systematic problems. The systematic problems of poverty. You know, there's underfunding in our education system. There's underfunding in our health system. We've got profit extraction from really key infrastructure like water, gas, electricity. These sorts of things should have a basic level of service for every single person. You know, we should be able to guarantee people have not just a basic level of income, but a basic level of service. You, as a British citizen, will be able to get access to a doctor. You'll be able to get you won't have to worry about paying for water. Water falls from the sky. We're one of the wettest countries in the world.
With all those issues that because many of the things that you've outlined there and you've explained are um, some would attribute to why some people are turning to reform because of the easy answers that they're providing very simple solutions to very complex problems like you've alluded to. So do you think that the Green Party needs to do you think we need to take the threat of reform more seriously, and how do you think we need to combat the far right taking advantage of all of those circumstances that you've already outlined in terms of people's, living conditions and the standards of living that people are struggling with at the moment.
So we do need to take them more seriously. We've got our first elected reform member in Leeds to the council. We had one defector, and so now we've got two reform councillors. So the reform have landed even in my city. Reform have landed across a lot of working class communities. But why? All of these reasons that I've outlined. So we've got to offer a different narrative. We've got to offer the hope. Do you know, that's one of the things that we did in Gibson Hare Hills is we gave people hope. We gave them a message that you're going to have someone who's hardworking, who's not going to just get elected and then disappear. And that's why I stick around and I show my face. Everyone has my personal mobile number in my ward. You know, they can get hold of me night and day. So when you asked at the start, why did I go out on the night of the riots? Is because this is my community. And just like when you have people like Keir Starmer, who's echoing Enoch Powell and echoing the language of reform, and calling us an island of strangers. We've got to provide the counter narrative. Like after the riots in Hare Hills, I organised this event called the City of Belonging, right, where we brought together people from all kinds of backgrounds under one roof in a church hall. We discussed some of the things that were causing conflict, and we discussed strategies and things that we could do to make things better. And we've been doing little projects like that non-stop, and the community gardens are another example of that. We've got an event next Friday with Black Lives Matter and some of the Romani community, because we want to make sure that things aren't forgotten about and things aren't
Mhm.
just swept under the carpet.
And if
So
I may, sorry to jump in, but obviously, because it sounds like what you're doing, what you're doing for your local community is incredible. You've got lots of initiatives on the go. You're clearly a well respected member of the community, and as a councillor as well as just someone else who lives there. How would you balance that if you are elected? How will you make sure that you've got time to both, deputy lead the party, whilst also making sure that you are able to continue to do all these wonderful things that you're doing in your local community as a councillor?
I was just actually going to go on to that.
Brill.
um, so where Keir Starmer calls us an island of strangers, and I did the City of Belonging event, I want a country of belonging. I want an island of belonging where every citizen actually is valued and is part of this country and part of society. Margaret Thatcher famously said that there's no such thing as society, and we need to bring society back. We need to we need to have people on the ground, just like we're doing in Gibson Hales. We need to take the model of Gibson Hales and we need to transfer it across the country. We need to have teams on the ground in every ward, every city, who are whether they're elected or not, they're engaged. They're switched on. They're working with the people in the communities to try and elevate voices, elevate people. And if we can share that model, I think we could be really, really powerful.
Brilliant, thank you. I am going to move on just for time. Just got two questions that have come in from viewers. So Mole has asked on Twitter, um, if I can find the question. What are your thoughts on the state of trans rights in the UK, and how would you improve life in the UK for trans people?
So trans people in this country are a very visual minority, and they're very marginalized minority. And this is something that I can relate to because it's the same with me. I'm a Muslim man with a big beard, with brown skin. The same people who come after me are the same people who come after trans people. So wherever there's discrimination and marginalization, we've got to make sure that we tackle it together. We make sure we've got to fight the same fight.
And finally, Electric Fairy is asked on TikTok. Um, Given that right wing parties like to use English culture and Englishness to justify their racism and xenophobia, how can we find a new way to engage with English culture and our cultural heritage in a way that still condemns the racism, the xenophobia, and the other bigotry that we see?
I think one of the best parts of British culture that I like is the fact that this is a really tolerant society. It's a society that embraces people for people, for this, and as long as we continue building on that culture of tolerance, yeah, and not allow people to turn our backs on that. This is one of the messages of reform: is be intolerant towards these communities, be intolerant towards those communities. We can't let them divide us because we've got to work together. We've got to live together. We're not going anywhere. Brown people aren't going anywhere. Muslims aren't going anywhere. Trans people aren't going anywhere. We're here. We're part of this country. Yeah, we have to make sure that we are living in a way that we're interconnected, and we have to make sure that if you've got a problem, it's my problem. If I've got a problem, you're going to stand up for me, and I'm going to stand up for you. That's the way we've got to do it.
Just before you go, if people are watching this and they're a member of the party or they're thinking of joining the party, and they'll have a vote in August, how do they find out more about you, your campaign? Where can they go, and how can they keep in touch with your campaign?
So I've got a website, mothinali.com. I'm on pretty much every social media there is: Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, everything. You can just type in my name, you'll find me. I'm really easy to get hold of. So if you want to have a conversation with me, you can. I put a lot of my stuff out on TikTok. I put a lot of my stuff out on my website. Key things around my campaign. We've got links in my WhatsApp group. You can join and part of the community as well. And we'd love to have you involved because I think it's time for change and it's time for the party to take a radical step forward. And if we don't, if right now if we don't do it, there's too much work to do. You know, the threat is too dangerous. There's too much work to do. The work is too important. We can't stop because they won't stop. The far right won't stop. We have to make sure that uh, we're not giving. You know, we're matching their energy at least. Uh, so yeah, find out. You can find me pretty much on any social media, on my website, um, on my WhatsApp group. Get involved and become a member of the Green Party by the 31st of July, so you can guarantee yourself a vote as well, and help decide the future of this party.
Fantastic. Mothin Ali, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. And we'll see you again. Thank you.
All right, thanks.